Welcome to Speaking of Service, the podcast that uncovers practical ways to grow service revenue, control costs, and improve customer satisfaction. If you're looking to innovate, gain a competitive edge, or just learn about the latest service trends, you've come to the right place. In this episode, Chris McDonald sits with Mohan Gatta, managing partner, Tata Consultancy Services, to discuss the role of predictive maintenance in field service organizations, his customer experiences, and how those learnings can drive greater returns for other customers.
Unplanned downtime is the enemy of efficient service, and when technicians are forced to react rather than predict, the resulting services are expensive, inefficient, and unsustainable over time, and potentially harmful to customer relationships. This is why predictive maintenance needs to be top of mind for all field service organizations and the greater ecosystem. Providing actionable insights to predict and resolve equipment issues before they result in costly downtime provides a massive competitive advantage over companies who only focus on usage or condition-based maintenance. Today, we will hear from Mohan Gatta as he explains the need for predictive maintenance and the not so daunting task of introducing it into your service ecosystem. Mohan brings a wealth of experience helping customers across the automotive, oil and gas, and industrial verticals. Mohan, welcome to the show. Could you share more about your role at TCS and your expertise within servitization and predictive maintenance?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning. I'm responsible for advisory services focused on customer experience, service lifecycle management, and manufacturing, energy, and resources unit of Tata Consultancy Services. I've been in various business and consulting roles across manufacturing value chain in automotive, industrial, aerospace, and defense industries. I work with customers in solving their problems and help with strategy, roadmap, and business value realization. My focus has been to help customers drive uptime, improve first-time fix, increase engagement with customers through service contracts, enable new servitization models. The shift from condition-based maintenance to predictive maintenance, along with other digital technologies, is making all this happen. We work on analyzing sensor data to identify emerging issues and plan for maintenance before the failure actually happens. And that means fixing the issue through remote services or organizing right technician with the right parts. Our team's core engineering expertise in mechanical, electrical, electronics, embedded software, telematics, coupled with cloud and digital technologies, helps in providing the right solution with early benefit realization.
Awesome. And can you tell me a little bit about how companies are looking at this maturity or this journey around, maintenance and service, how predictive maintenance fits in? And in particular, are there certain areas or use cases where that journey where they're going from, whether it's reactive to proactive to predictive, where is that starting point? Where does it fit within the maturity curve?
Yeah, sure, Chris. So, manufacturers are building analytical machine learning models to leverage sensor data to determine remaining useful life of components and predict timely replacements. So, with multi-part parameter sensors, they are looking to move beyond alerts to knowing what is actually going wrong. Earlier, if an engine oil pressure dropped or temperature went up, equipment would have to be stopped, and then technician would determine the reason for it. You would have oil sample being sent for laboratory analysis. Today, with sensors that can indicate the type of oil contamination while the engine is running, along with oil pressure, duty cycle, load factor, and onboard diagnostics, the effort is to determine which component is going to fail, and then plan for technician and part replacement. We see truck OEMs are going for vehicle monitoring centers to drive uptime for fleets through proactive monitoring and planning of service parts. The other use case we see is in terms of optimizing maintenance costs by shifting to replace consumables, components based on actual condition rather than fixed intervals. Earlier, filters, would be replaced every 1,000 hours or 5,000 miles. But now there's an opportunity to replace only when the filtering of contaminants has gone below a desired threshold. Uh, Today, fleet managers can know the condition of equipments or vehicles and how they're being operated, and monitor key parameters like fuel consumption, all the while sitting in their offices through the service they've subscribed to. We see manufacturers doing over-the-air updates to fix issues, upgrade features in vehicles, equipment. Mine operators with mixed fleet are able to plan maintenance in advance, monitor operations, and measure output. And they are able to move beyond predictive maintenance, largely based on the power of sensor data analytics.
And you mentioned, one of the factors, driving some of this move towards predictive maintenance being cost. What do you see as the major business driver or economic factor that gets a company to not only consider going to predictive maintenance, but to invest in scaling, that out, whether it's across their fleets, across their componentry, across their fields? Is it that cost cutting, or that's the initial investment, and then the long-term factors of better customer relationships or even subscription business model follows? How do your customers look at sort of justifying that initial investment and then scaling the investment?
Yeah, sure, Chris. In fact, I wouldn't put it as cost optimization, though optimization is definitely the byproduct, because you are able to replace the components as they are needed, and you are able to plan and limit catastrophic failures, which become very expensive. But the key driver is really the shift to servitization, where you are giving customers more convenience, flexibility, and value for their money. So essentially, you're moving to outcome-based models. You are speaking customers' language. You are really charging them based on what matters most to them, whether it's fuel savings. We've seen tire manufacturers considering charging the usage of tires based on fuel savings, so which is really the full outcome based model. So in my view, it's the value that you get through a shift to predictive maintenance, and more in terms of outcomes that are getting delivered, which is really driving this change.
I think that's a really important part in my experience, that outcome based relationship with your customer, and that sort of service relationship, customer relationship is critical to these business models and the future of service and what customers expect or have come to expect. I think it's often taken for granted how important predictive maintenance is in enabling that outcome based, servitization and that sort of engagement with your customers. Can you help our listeners understand why predictive maintenance is so critical to enabling that outcome based service?
Yeah, predictive maintenance, in fact, is the key to realizing the true as a service model. Uh, as I said earlier, as a service model is essentially providing flexibility, convenience, and outcome to customers. And in order to deliver the performance outcomes, manufacturers need to ensure availability of equipment with high confidence. And that's where predictive maintenance comes in. Take tire as a service, a journey for tire manufacturers. Vehicle maintenance bundles, which involved oil, brake, calipers, all wipers, all things around tires and elsewhere in the vehicle, was being given through service contracts. You really didn't need predictive maintenance there. But then tire manufacturers have got this tire pressure monitoring system. It's been there for quite some time. And they've started moving in that direction. What they started offering subscription services where the users could know the condition of the tires, and they saw value in it. And now they are moving to subscription of tires, which is that they're not selling tires. They're charging based on the usage of tires, miles covered per month, or tread wear, right? And for that, you need to know the condition of the tire. And then you're not selling the tire. The ownership of the tire stays with you. You really want to know how the tire is, how long it will last, and your margins, your profitability is dependent on that. And tomorrow, if you when they move to completely outcome based, which is actually, you say, the fuel savings that is delivered by using a particular tire, especially in mine haulers, right? Then you are looking at the service, this entire product and service combination, completely different. So for their predictive maintenance is giving that complete visibility and confidence to manufacturers to take that big step.
Yeah, absolutely. The tire subscription is something I take full advantage of myself. So, absolutely, it changes the way that I, even me as a consumer thinks about, my relationship to buying tires or thinking about it that way. It's something that, you took for granted. It's something you had to get when you had to get it, but now it's something that is, taken care of for you and there for you when you need it. Hopefully not too often, so to speak. But, where do you think your customers put the notion of moving to predictive service, the elements of what it takes in terms of data strategy, in terms of analytics modeling, in terms of operationalizing them, then adopting the insights within their overall servitization models, and where would you recommend they see that within that maturity curve?
Yeah, so I would take a step back and then look at the current landscape. Manufacturers are today churning out connected equipment, but then many of our customers have equipment which last 10, 20, 30 years. So what that means is that in field they've got both connected and legacy equipment. So first, the entire install base is not connected. Right, and then the install base that you have in field has gone through various evolution stages. So first point, for them to do instrumentation and connect legacy equipment, even with modifications and upgrades, is not economical and feasible in many cases. And so, they have to look at what makes sense, what is economical, and where they can drive value to their customers. What it means is even their customers have these mixed, fleet, right? Legacy as well as connected. So with that background, what manufacturers are essentially focusing on are these connected equipment, data that's coming in, and they are building analytical ML models, on top of these sensor data to drive essentially insights that can tell them what's going wrong, and how they can plan for service and parts. So in terms of data strategy, I would say that there is this opportunity to do on the edge analytics now with vehicles becoming software defined vehicles and the entire architecture, electronics undergoing change. There is this big opportunity of significant diagnostics there, and the rest of it happening in a cloud, and from there, actionable insights going to the users, the fleet managers. So that's how we see this entire landscape unfolding.
That makes sense, and it sounds like even though if I'm looking at the enterprise, an entire you have a diversity of equipment, either that you're servicing or within your operations. Some of that is connected, some of it is not. But that doesn't mean you start with connecting everything. You start where it's economical to either put more connectivity and insight, but more importantly, you start with that information you already have and available to you, building that data strategy out, that analytics strategy out against the equipment that is connected, against those models and equipment that you can start building that new type of business model and customer relationship with, rather than staying stuck by saying, hey, everything's not connected. How do I move forward, so to speak? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, that's how we think organizations and progress in this journey. And these models, ML models, the analytical models, many of them are statistical. They need continuous effort to monitor. They need to be changed with the changing operating parameters. So it's not that you've done it once and then you can leave it for it to run on its own. Yes, I think we will reach that stage, but currently, there is work involved from data scientists to look at what model would best fit any given point in time.
So again, we mentioned what it means for an organization to not only build these models, but the idea of maintaining, these models. What it means to, on an ongoing basis, for organizations that may or may not have a data science practice, that may be, new to what it means to maintain this kind of intelligence against, their service business and their industrial equipment. How do you see organizations, maturing into that realization that it takes some level of commitment and expertise to really make these models work and maintain them of a quality, and an accuracy perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. And organizations realize the criticality of this entire initiative, and I think we see across a commitment to build in-house capability in parallel to co-opting partners who work alongside in their journey. And I think there is no shortcut to that, because this is going to be proprietary in the long run, and much of it will also go back to engineering, right, which would impact the way products are getting designed in future. Though that's not the scope currently, where we are looking more from a service outcome perspective. But it's the digital thread that we are looking at, from engineering to supply chain, manufacturing, then the aftermarket. So we see organizations committing themselves to this journey. Definitely, there is an internal team that's working on it, along with the technology providers and system integrators.
So, I always like to ask, people like yourself that have experience working with customers, and I'm sure many executives, within your customers. What are some things that you wish you could have told an executive, just a few years ago, starting off this journey, that if they could get that right, things would go a lot smoother, or things they need to be aware of?
So, yeah, thanks, Chris. That's a great question. And manufacturers are committed to servitization, and if they can look at this entire servitization as a service journey holistically and bring all the functions together, that will be really bringing the right value, and they would not have to iterate and try to prove that this journey is paying off, and they're on the right track to their leadership and boards. So I think as a service model, true value is in giving this holistic service experience, where after an insight on impending failure is determined, customers are provided the right service along with the right part, which really drives the uptime, first time fix, value for customer, and in turn drives value for manufacturers. So I think that's one area where if they could focus even now harder, and if they could have done it earlier, I would say it would have helped them really go much faster in this journey.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it's being prepared to be agile, but keeping the future in mind in terms of what needs to come together to make these work more scalably and sustainably, within the organization, including, being cognizant that there's a whole service life cycle. There's service operations, there's spare parts management, there's making sure the right part was with the right person deployed to the right asset, all in a proactive manner that can really come together to bring that business model to a whole new level. And let me ask you as a final question, as these technologies, these enabling technologies like IoT, connectivity, AI continue, to mature and organizations continue to mature in their adoption of them, where do you think the future is going when it comes to servitization?
In fact, very rightly, as you said, AI, 5G, extended reality, automation, and other digital technologies are going to accelerate the shift to predictive maintenance, frictionless service experience, thereby driving higher service revenues and even provisioning of newer services by manufacturers and the ecosystems. And so I would see more of ecosystem play coming in. And OEMs, manufacturers, and their key partners will be the lead players in these ecosystems. I see products are going to be designed for longer life with the focus on services. So it really goes back in the value chain to design. And the way entire supply chain manufacturing is being organized. So probably we'll see more customer value centric propositions coming out. And there's another big driver, which is sustainability, and that's a board level agenda today. And so businesses will look at servitization more favorably, and that would accelerate adoption. Recycling, reuse, and remanufacturing will gain traction since servitization means the equipment or vehicle is going to be largely with large fleets or the manufacturers themselves.
And Mohan, before we close, any final advice that you'd give to our listeners?
Sure, Chris. I think I would say that we need to just move faster. And keep the entire service lifecycle management and product lifecycle management in mind as we go along. This is cross-functional, and this is a complete organizational business model change. And it impacts all the stakeholders in the organization. So if we approach with this mindset, I think it'll be easier to realize value both for manufacturers as well as to their customers.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great speaking with you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Speaking of Service podcast, brought to you by PTC. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a rating or review. And be sure to check out other episodes to hear new perspectives on improving life for aftermarket professionals, service teams, and the customers they support. If you have a topic of interest or want to provide feedback, email us at speakingofservice@ptc.com or visit us at ptc.com/speakingofservice.